Hi everyone. So today's unit that we'll be doing is managing continuous organisational improvement, and my name is Shazia Khan. The learning outcome we'll be doing today is learning outcome 3, which is to be able to plan change for organisational improvement. And before I go into learning outcome 3, I just want to give you an outline of what we did in learning outcome 2, so you've got a little bit of an idea where you can have a look at learning outcome 2 resources and the recording on Moodle. So in learning outcome 2, we looked at being able to analyse opportunities for improvement to organisational activities. We went on to look at analysing sources of information used by organisations, which identify the improvements needed. We looked at academic sources. We also looked at PESTEL and looked at political, economical, social, technological, legal and ethical changes. We also looked at the element of strategic capabilities, and we looked at how to identify these when it comes to organisational resources and competencies. We went on to look at the key issues, which were what are the strategic capabilities, how do strategic capabilities contribute to competitive advantage and superior performance, and how to diagnose strategic capabilities. And we looked at how to manage the development of strategic capabilities. We then went on to look at the element of resource-based strategy and looked at the resource-based view, which is RBV strategy, and how that works within an organisation. We then went on to look at resources and competencies and looked at the element of resources and why they are so important within an organisation, and competencies too. We look at components of strategic capabilities. We looked at an example we gave of IKEA and looked at their strategic element. We looked at 2.2, which is to explain big data and the evaluation of its contribution to continuous organisational improvement. And we identified what structured and unstructured data is, and semi-structured as well. We looked at the 4 dimensions of big data, which are variety, veracity, velocity, and volume, and explained each one with references to cases. We then went on to look at 2M1, which is to review of information of IKEA to identify areas of improvement, and looked at their data analysis and their goals. We then went on to look at the evaluation of potential benefits of the proposed changes to IKEA, which was 2D1, and looked at the element of how they've started by making India as the main sourcing hub, and for bamboo and local wood that they've started using. We then went on to look at what environmental auditing is within Learning Outcome 2, and the importance of environmental auditing when it comes to any sort of management tool for any organisation. We then went on to look at auditing and how its origins came about through the financial sector, and how environmental auditing is really important within any organisation. We then went on to look at the distinction between an environmental review and an environmental audit, and identify the objectives, what it covers, how often they are required, and what are the geographical boundaries within a review and an audit, and looked at the differences within a diagram. We then went on to look at the distinctions between financial audits and environmental audits, and looked at the legal basis of audit, frequency, who does it, the methodology, the access to audit, and liability. And we also looked at environmental audits and looked at the legal basis of the audit, the frequency, who does it, and looked at the methodology, the access to audit, and the liability, so who is liable for all that. So we identified these elements in Learning Outcome 2. Now we're going to go on to Learning Outcome 3, which looks at the elements of planning change for organisational improvement. So now we're moving on to learning outcome 3, which is the final learning outcome, and we're looking at the elements of being able to plan a change for organisational improvement. We'll look at the indicative content is organisational changes requirement, resources, leadership and management abilities, job roles and responsibilities, equipment, procedures, activities, culture. Look at agreed changes, identifying stakeholders, those involved in change and those affected by change, communication with stakeholders, appropriate format, feedback processes, negotiation, PR, gaining agreement, negotiation skills, formal agreement requirements. Look at project planning, project management techniques, including Prince2, documentation, communication, setting criteria to monitor and measure improvement, timescales, system design management, so resources, documentation, communication policies and procedures, process review, so the importance of monitoring, using feedback and performance measurement, and why that's just so important within an organisation. So the strategic plan. When it comes to any organisation, trying to improve an organisation, you need to assess the elements of it. You need a solution. You need an action plan in place. You need to create and measure teams, optimize, reinforce things. So it's really important when it comes to any organisation that you're able to put in together, elements of a model that will try to change this organisation. And the importance of change plan is, there's a number of factors that affect it. It's important to have a change management lead who can own the overall process. Driving change is the responsibility of the individuals involved in the project, including sponsors. It may be individuals, who you need to make sure, you identify who the audience is, who is going to look at the project, who's going to make the changes. And, it is a significant element of any organisation to make any sort of changes. It could be changes in the form of organisational structures, it could be business models, it could be changes in the form of strategic focus on the market, technological changes, behaviour, cultural, leadership and management. It could be any sort of changes that come in place that need to be changed. So the first one we're looking at is a change model, and why that is so important concept. So a change management model is a system that strategically assists companies in navigating through periods of transformation. Change management models help organizations undergo transitions to lead to positive outcomes. And this is a commonly used change model that illustrates how employees go through like 4 stages when managing change, and it begins with denial, then move to resistance, exploration, and finally commitment. So that is really important within an organisation. Employees will start in the first place of the process. Denial, it can be seen there, grapevines, communication that supports rumours and assumptions and their suspicions doubtful. They will move into the other stages once they see the strategic change plan. So, this plan is based on the input of the staff. So it's really important, that they work around this model to try and implement, the different changes that need to be brought about and make sure that they are implementing these changes. And you have 4 stages of denial as well in this. So, it could be anger, fear, acceptance, and commitment. So it's really important that you start, bringing these phases into place in an organisation to make sure that, you have the change in place so that, there's no there's no negative impact or anything. And, this model helps in regards to, the fact that, you're able to move on from it and make these changes to make sure that you have, different responses from different employees, but, make sure that, when you are applying these changes, that the whole point of this change model is to make sure there's clear communication, between the employees, also, recognizing any sort of milestones that the employees have done. Make sure that you are, making sure that they are engaging with the other members of the team. So, it's really important element of any organization. Then we've got the organizational change governance. And this is mainly to focus on elements of changing leadership and it needs to be a clear governance. So excellent change governance ensures we're focusing on maximum value from any change initiatives. So we're looking at things like, what roles are needed to lead and carry out the organizational change, if any, who will fill these roles, who will have authority for the decisions, who will be the charter for the people in charge, so who will be speaking on behalf of the people that are in charge as well, what changes are they going to make, so they need to be clear on that. How will they meet? How will they communicate, manage the information of the effort and interface with operations? There will be an agreement on decision levels of authority, so different levels of authority, and governance change is needed because it ensures the achievement of any sort of organization and ensures that issues are identified and resolved, removing any sort of obstacles or barriers that affect this decision making. So this organizational change is really important when it comes to the element of change of governance. Common approach and infrastructure for change. So building a common approach, global infrastructure, the three initiatives, that you have, and it should be a global standard mobilized for capital, sustainability, quality infrastructure, making sure that there's change that has been adopted and, making sure that, there is change that impacts and nurtures these relationships. In this, there's a tendency for leaders to rush to action and provide thoughtful oversight methodology, tools and infrastructure to ensure that all organizational change is led effectively and produces the best outcome. So making sure that everything is put into place, there's plans in place, and making sure that there's clear examples of objectives that have been met and there's organizational change in place. Too often organizations have multiple and competing approaches to change with no language or tools, and this makes it difficult to identify how much change is happening and how it is resourced. The executives needs to establish strategic disciplines, needs to be put in place to make sure that the leaders manage this kind of change. So if change is to be coming about, it needs to be made sure that this change is come about properly, and making sure that the element of this is that everyone is following that change. So accurately defining the scope of organizational change. So transformational changes have a large scale and scope adaptive change. They often involve a simultaneous shift in mission and the strategy of the organization, the company or team structure, or our people and organizational performance, or even processes of the organization. One of the major failures of the strategic change applies the definition of the scope. Too often leaders underestimate, as I mentioned, what organization change entails. In reality, when change structure, there's a significant impact. So if you change the structure of the organization, who's going to make the decision, who the managers are, it does cause a big issue within the whole point of the strategic change plans. There's considerable impact on human factors of organizational culture, working relationships and behavior. Evolving from the old and transitioning to the new takes place. Coaching is often necessary and people need to rebuild, mastery to reconnect and feel part of something new. So the strategic plan must reinforce the right of behaviors. It must consider, organizational change, because that's a big part of it. you know, it might be an official thing, but you need to make sure that, you know, you are establishing that it is organizational change. You have put, you know, boundaries in place. You have also, you know, made sure that the employers know the different changes. And, you know, make sure that this is it's a critical example of any organization. It could include things like if there's change in sales, like we said, or maybe compliance. It may be the fact that there's change in the hierarchy in who's the CEO. So, you know, it's a specific change management system, and it ensures that, you know, goals are met together with the definition and no one is left apart. You know, this making sure that everyone understands the project and the goals and the changes that have come about. So it's really important these are identified to the employees. And, you know, there are different times when changes come about. Strategic change transformation. So let's have a look. Strategic change. So this diagram actually shows you the classification of change. And this involves a radical change shift in organization strategy, maybe culture, and it's aimed at, you know, addressing issues and capitalizing these issues as well. So we've got the transformation, and this is the evolution. So transformational change implemented gradually through interrelated initiatives likely to be proactive, undertaken in participation of the need of future changes. And then we've got realignment, so adaptation. So you've got here the change undertaken to realign the way in which the organization operates, implemented in a series of steps. Then you've got the revolution, which is transformational change that occurs via simultaneous initiatives on many fronts. So it's more likely to be forced and reactive because of the changing competitive conditions that the organization is facing. And then reconstruction, a change undertaken to realign the way in which the organization operates with many initiatives implemented simultaneously. And this is often used and reactive because of the changing competitive element of the market. So these kind of changes that need to be brought about, you know, things like digital maybe changes, these kind of transform what strategic changes, marketing, data leadership, sustainability. These changes help companies stay competitive, you know, in the fast-paced organization. So these changes will come about and are used in mainly in business, commonly used so that it, you know, these transformations are put in place to developing skills and encouraging like new ways to, you know, enhance their productivity and also make sure that, you know, they are having new ideas and developing new resources as well. So that diagram identifies that as well. There's a video for you to watch here on looking at changing management and how it looks at elements of the changes that management could put in place, organizational changes, strategic transformation, and elements of that. So have a look at that in your own time as well. Organizational culture, which is really an important element of any organization, and it's composed of like your beliefs and expectations shared by the organization. And it consists of common norms, values, and beliefs. And in transformational change, the new strategy, structure, systems, and processes are being implemented through the organizational culture. In order to shift to this organizational cultures, leaders must want it and be fully committed to it. So, you know, there needs to be this organizational culture put in place, you know, and it's a set of values and beliefs and attitudes, systems and rules that outline the influence employee behavior within an organization. And it reflects on employees, customers, vendors, stakeholders, and it's, you know, looks at the brand image. So it's really important to have this in place and maybe, you know, try to reflect and have an organizing culture in place so that, employers are committed to this, and also organisations. We have the organisational culture assessment, and this are tools that organisations use to evaluate the values and beliefs and behaviours of their employees, and they are designed to provide insight into the company's culture, which can improve any forms of communication, productivity, and employee engagement. So, there is an element of how this is used within the organisation and why there's a need to have this in organisation, and, try to improve any sort of employee engagement, and, try to reduce turnover. And the whole point of this is trying to make sure that everyone meets the, deliver the business strategy required for success, and see that the changes are implemented in having this organisational assessment in place. And the link for that is just on there, that you could have a look at the plan in place. So there's an example of an organisational culture plan, and the whole purpose of this is to evaluate its overall workforce culture and ethics, and, look at analysing any sort of implicit or explicit beliefs and attitudes held by the organisation and fostered by those associated with it, with the in mind the employees. So now we're going to look at 3.1, which is to evaluate the factors that create the need for change in a named organisation. So there are factors that are needed. Things like external factors and internal factors can both cause these types of changes within a company. External forces can change globalization, workforce, diversity, ethical behavior, and technology. Internal forces of change consist of poor financial performance, internal crisis, or changing the working expectations. So, there is a need for change, and it identifies there's a need for change because, it's important for any organization in regards to growth. Change can be exciting for some organizations to reevaluate their processes. Some organizations don't like change, but for most organizations, it's really important that change is put into place, and how they recognize that there's a need for change. They monitor any sort of various indicators, poor customer service, poor employee engagement, poor productivity. So as we say, as businesses that continue to survive and even strive are usually the ones who, easily adapt to change. A variety of factors can cause a business to reevaluate their changes. So, there are different elements that need to be put into place that can identify. So it could be things like we said, competition. So the entrance of a new competitor, that's mostly the main thing when it comes to any sort of organization changing and getting together its own elements of, the fact that, we need to change things. We need to make sure our product is better. We need to make sure that, we've got product in place that looks at elements of, it's better than, the other elements of the new organization, to change the brand. These are things that, need to be changed. For example, it gives an example: a small electronics store that was the only game in town might have to change its image in the marketplace when large chain store opens nearby. While the smaller store might not be able to compete in price, it can be advertising to position itself as friendly, service-oriented, and local alternative. Another one factor is quite a popular one, which is technological changes. So this could impact on elements of, the organization itself. The increasing market competition and constantly evolving technology lead to technological change within our organization. Technology often involves introducing new software or systems to improve businesses and through processes. However, technology project goals are often improperly defined and poorly communicated, which scares and frustrates employees and leads to resistance. Technological change management is about identifying new technology and implementing digital strategy for improved productivity and profitability. So, you can have some examples of technological changes could be things like digital transformation, which is the integration of digital technology across all business domains, resulting in fundamental changes to how a business operates and delivers to its customers. There are different ways to use it. And then we've got another one, which is desire for growth, and that's businesses want to attain growth that might need to change the method of their operations. For example, the Subway sandwich chain started a small business under a different name in 1965 and struggled through its first several years. The company began to flourish after it changed its name to Subway in 1974 and began to sell franchises. So, according to Entrepreneur website, there were 322,525 Subway franchises in United States as of 2009. So that's a huge growth. Some other factors are things like need to improve processes. So a business might need to implement new processes, productivity to become more efficient, and making sure that they're shifting from the older stuff. An example was Sigma Healthcare, which implemented a leaner production process known as Six Sigma to improve service and reducing operation costs. And then government regulations it may be that, government want you to change the laws or regulations that impact on how a company is run. So, it could be governmental changes, it could be and any elements of, the businesses have to distribute food like this, they must follow the regulations, they must follow the law. So, there are different changes that can be put in place, and there's sometimes, changes that are unplanned. An unplanned change cannot be predicted, but can be dealt with effective change. Things like, due to COVID, we had the shift to remote working. That was a huge change, and that was put in place. Unplanned change can also take place if another company, like we said, or competitor woos away one of the most valued team members with an exciting promotion or higher salary. So it could be anything. It could be also remedial changes, making sure you are addressing customer communication issues, providing any sort of training for the new elements of, the new people that join in the organization. So, it's organizational change is something that needs to be taken into account, and making sure that you are following elements of organizational change, because, for any organization, there will be any sort of changes that come about. Strategic change includes things like business policies or structures or businesses. Things like people-centered change includes instituting new parental leave, structural change, technological, like we said, remedial changes, and these changes are implemented is like a business necessity. So, these changes need to be come into place, and make sure that, these changes are important in any organization and they have a significant impact on an organization. Some major changes to personnel, company goals, service offerings, these are changes, and it's important for any sort of organization to implement these changes. So now we're going to look at 3.2, which looks at the element of explaining the changes required by a named organization in order to in order to achieve improvements. So typically the concept of organizational changes regard to organization wide range of smaller changes, such as adding a new person or modifying any sort of program. Examples of organization type may include change in mission, which I mentioned, restructuring of the organization, any sort of new technology that needs to be implemented. That is a big element of it as well. Any sort of total quality management that needs to be implemented. Elements of, change that needs to be implemented within an organization, maybe new, new managers taking over. Some experts refer to organizational transformation Often this term designates a fundamental radical reorientation in the way the organisation operates. Change should not be done by the sake of change. It's a strategy to accomplish some overall goal. Usually organisational change is provoked by some major outside driving issue, for example, cuts in funding, new major markets, dramatic change in productivity. Typical organisations must undertake organisation-wide range to evolve to different levels in their life cycle. After being named the CEO in 2014 February, Satya Nadella undertook a major restructuring of the massive company to do away with the destructive internal competition. Products and platforms will no longer exist as separate forms, but rather all Microsoft employees would be focusing on a set of common goals, which was firstly to reinvent productivity and business processes, secondly to build the intelligent cloud platform, and thirdly creating more personal computing. In September 2016, Nadella shook things up again with the merging of Microsoft Research Group and the Bing Cortana and Information Platform Group teams to create a new AI and research group with about 5,000 engineers, computer scientists. Its main goal here was to innovate artificial intelligence across the Microsoft product line. As the reorganization began, Nadella shared with employees a new sense of mission, and their mission was to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. He recalled this thought process over the past year. We've challenged ourselves to think about our core mission, our soul. What would be lost if we disappeared? We asked ourselves, what culture do we want to foster that will be able to achieve these goals? Prior to the restructuring, employees have been lacking a positive sense of purpose, with the result being low morale and weakened employee engagement. So we're looking at 3.3, which is to prepare a plan for a named organisation to implement the proposed improvements. So organisational change, as we said, can be a cause of anxiety for companies, and hence, as a result of detailed implementation plan has to be prepared to achieve the goal. For this task, I'm going to discuss the change implementation plan with Microsoft put in place to achieve new leadership and renewed market push under the leadership of Satya Nadella. And, an implementation plan outline is a document that outlines the step that the team need to take to accomplish any sort of shared goals or initiatives. So, you have to define the process. You have to make sure you implement the plan, analyze the current process, redesign the process, test it, communicate, implement new processes. So, they are, it's an essential part of any implementation, and it needs to be put in place to identify steps and strategies that need to be taken in place. So we'll look at the one for Satya Nadella. So this is in regard to the description. So there's a change in performance. The steps that need to be taken is shifted the company's focus entirely and reorganize fully to support the new plan. The time frame is 6 to 12 months. The next one, the description, is communicate across various channels to involve employees. The steps to take is blog about changes and explain what to expect. The time frame is continuous and ongoing. The next one is leverage the use of technology, and the steps to take is creation of a new intranet and training for all employees on new technology like iCloud, computing, data management and warehousing. The time frame is 2 months from September 2014. The description for the next one is dropped Windows Mobile and other loss-making businesses. The steps are the company top management spin of Nokia as a separate division and stopped investing in the loss-making businesses, and that would be done by September 2016. Next one is more internal marketing with employees for job placements and offered. The steps to take is the company prepared a plan to place employee on new roles within the company after training. and the time frame is September 2016 to January 2017. So this table identifies the changes that need to be made in regards to this. So the plan to implement the proposed improvement also included the CEO started from the top. It asked Microsoft employees what they think. So that's really important to get the employees involved into your decision-making process. Creating a new communication channel via the intranet and personalized emails to staff as monthly updates. Also asked all department heads to keep a positive attitude and have communication channels open. Also frequently give feedback on the new project they initiated. And it's hard to make organizational change turn out the way Satya Nadella wanted. But by doing the due diligence and creating the plan, the top management was able to implement. He ensured that the changes he wanted to achieve were going to be successful eventually in turning around the company. So 3M1, analyze the monitoring processes which need to be put in place to ensure changes lead to planned improvements. So the description here was the surveys need to be put in place, and the plan was from 31st of October 2017, and the responsibility of it was of HRM. And the next one is financial delegation in the diagram and in the table, and authority matrix, which was the deadline was 21st of December 2017, and the responsibility of credit and risk department. The next one is restructuring of workplace, and that was by the 21st of December 2017, and by the infrastructure department. And then the next one, automation of branches, and that was to be done by 21st of December 2017 by the infrastructure department. And then intra and internet connectivity by the 21st of December 2017 by the IT department. And the training program on technology usage by older employees by the 21st of December 2017 by HR operations and marketing department. So the plan will consist of the final proof to be approved by the BOD, along with the involvement of the volunteers opted to become change leader. All discussions are covered over by 31st of December 2017. The selection of the vendors will be based on their experience with international private banks and not the favoritism or all way of tendering and calling for bidding. Supply of machines will be through national level distributor with long-term contract for maintenance of international quality widely used products in international commercial banks, and the branches will be linked with webcam through intranet in order to track the process. The branches will be selected based on the categorization, and the change will be executed in phased manner. The A-grade branches with more than £1 billion deposits will be upgraded within first 3 months, and the B more than 500 million and C less than 100 million will be upgraded during second and third phase. But the financial delegation and internet connectivity will be completed with 3 months for all branches. There will also be monitoring will be carried out using the current wait time as the base, and the change will be monitored accordingly. Every single small step taken by the employee towards changes will be rewarded. The names will be displayed inside the branch and on the website. The daily reporting of the progress will be maintained at branch level to be sent initially using fax and within 1 month using email. The change log is to be maintained by every change leader, and the core group will be sharing and meeting after 10 days to share their experiences and achievements. The change agents will be immediately given promotion after the successful implementation of the change, and the entire staff member will be given an increment. Those are able to complete the training required by the implementation of the changes. The customer survey will be carried out afterwards to measure the response on service quality using wait time as a parameter, and further suggestions will be taken while getting this form filled by the customers. And the final awardees will be champions who remained instrumental in bringing the change to be facilitated by the industrialists. And it will be completed within 12 months, though the schedule has been made for 11 months, while 1 month as grace period to cover up any major changes or problems being faced during the execution of the project. So these elements need to be put into place to provide any sort of changes, and they need to be clear indicators that are put in place and monitored and look at the impact and the effectiveness of these changes. So here is a video which looks at elements of the change management and how that impacts on any organisation. So you watch that. Sorry, this is a quiz. Sorry, do the quiz in your own time, and it will help you advance your your skills and look at the different types of changes within management. So we've finished learning outcome 3 now, and these are the references we've used for learning outcome 3. I just want to give you a quick summary of what we've done in today's session, so you have a bit of an idea of what we've covered. So in learning outcome 3, just to summarize, we've looked at being able to plan change for organisational improvements. We've looked at the organisational changes required, resources, leadership and management. We've looked at identifying stakeholders. We've looked at planning, project planning. We've looked at the strategic change plan, the change model. We've looked at the common approach and infrastructure for change. We went on to look at defining the scope of organisational change and looked at technological changes and elements of that. We looked at the strategic change. We looked at organisational culture and also looked at the elements of the organisational culture assessment, why that's so important for an organisation. We then went on to look at evaluating the factors that create the need for change, such as competition, technology, desire for growth, need to improve processes, government regulations. We then went on to look at 3.2, which is to explain the changes required by a named organisation. And we looked at the element of preparing a plan for that named organisation to implement proposed improvements, and we did that in the form of a diagram. We also looked at identifying, analysing and monitoring processes which need to be put in place to ensure changes lead to planned improvements, and looked at systems, procedures and monitoring that are put in place. We looked at elements of that and why change is so consistent and there's a need for change. And we looked at discussing the waiting times and the, making sure that we've identified any sort of elements of how long it could be completed in. So that was learning outcome 3, the final learning outcome. The next session we have is the assignment discussion session, which will be putting everything together and going through the assignment brief. Please try to look at the video and do the quiz on learning outcome 3, and this all will be available on Moodle for you. The recorded sessions, learning outcome 1, 2 and 3 are all on Moodle for you now. And if you have any questions, please email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, and I will see you in the last session, which is the assignment discussion session. Thank you for attending today's session.